So the session, master assistive technology in 5 easy steps. Like there's lots of steps we could go through, but I want to just pick out some of the common things that I see all the time in terms of my experience and what's going to work best. What am I saying to you? What is your promise, I guess, if you stay with me until the end? If you tap along with some of this, you're obviously sitting at home, probably having a cup of tea or coffee. Maybe you're putting the kids to bed, something I've actually escaped tonight, so that's all good. Kate, if you're watching, thanks very much. She's putting Oisin down tonight. So look, I appreciate your multitasking, but try to give it your all. And what my promise to you is that you will walk away feeling a little bit more confident about the technology that you use, that your students are using, and hopefully, we'll walk away knowing what's actually on a tablet, what's on a laptop that's built in, that's readily accessible, and that's really easy to use. And I think that's the key, because I see that we spend far too much often. Okay, let's jump into this. So that is the challenge really, is to let yourself go and get yourself a cup of tea, have that dinner, but tune in, and I say that lightly, but like literally pay attention, put down that phone, just be with me for this hour, this 60 minutes, and I'll give you as much as I possibly can in that block of time. Okay, so again, there's a few other things here that I wanted to give to people. And that is, if you stay with me until the end, a lot of you have already got a lot of our free material. Some of you are probably on our courses already. But what I'm doing is we're giving out a free AT guide. So if you got the guide already, brilliant. Okay, so what are we going to cover? So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my background, my experience to date, what that was like in terms of my school, in terms of dyslexia, in terms of ADHD. I'll do my best to keep my Cork accent as neutral as is possible, and as not as speedy as I typically am. Okay, but what I really want to do is go through this kind of 5 steps and talk about technology, talk about some of the misconceptions, like I say, but then talk about laptop versus iPad. And I want to dig into this with you, because I'm sure you're sitting there and you're thinking, God, I don't know whether my students should have a laptop or an iPad. They have a laptop. What should they be using? Should they be going for the AT grant? What is it? How do I get the AT grant, and how do I apply? And if you're not in your head now and thinking, geez, yeah, there are things I do every day, I'm trying to get my head around them, I'm going to go through them. And I'm going to do it practically. I'm going to step into it and actually show you a laptop that you could be buying on the likes of Curry's, what type of iPad you could and should be buying if that's something you're thinking about. I want to look at a little bit of technology for reading, obviously, technology for writing. We'll touch on a little bit of stuff for maths if that's something you want to do. And obviously there's a lot around touch typing and study skills. And for me, it's the first 3 steps are the absolute key. They're things I really want to kind of dive into. But again, if you're just joining us, thank you so much for coming on. You're super welcome. Please just use the Q&A. We've got over 250 on now, and it's great to have so many people here. But we will be done by 8:30. I absolutely promise you that. Okay, so who am I, and what am I all about, and what am I doing, and why should I be even talking here? So James Northridge from Cork, Mary Curie Research Fellow as of recently, and now back in UCC and working here from the campus under Your Ability. So we've been in and around, Your Ability has been in operation for a while. I saw some of the people that were registering and coming on board today. A lot of you are on our course already. Brilliant. Some of you are, have come to some of my face-to-face, some of the trainings I've given, or you sort of engaged in some capacity, or you've maybe had colleagues who have. And so hopefully you got something from what we do. I have a master's in disability studies and rehabilitation from UCD. I have, obviously my Mary Curie is from Boston. So I did 3 years research working in Boston. And really my skill set was mostly around kids with learning difficulties, additional learning needs, but mostly kids with dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADHD, some ASD. But out of my comfort zone really was going to America and working an awful lot with kids that were non-verbal. That was one of the key areas I worked on, kids with AAC, so augmentative and alternative communication. And it was a really eye-opener, I guess, working at the medical school and just getting that on board. Absolutely love technology, hate change, like many of us, I'm sure, right now. And that's something that we're obviously dealing with on a daily basis, literally on an hourly basis for some. Married to the wonderful Kate, who again, if she's watching, thanks for putting Oisin down. We've a beautiful little boy, 2-year-old Oisin, which obviously gives me an insight into parenting that I never knew before, I'm going to be really honest. So it's all good. Okay, so what is it that I do? And I suppose, again, what are we doing and what have I been doing over the last few years? That top right here is the research kind of element of what I've been doing. and that was Your Ability won United Nations Zero project. So something that we were actually super proud of. We went to the United Nations just before kind of lockdown, actually, which was, we were lucky, was kind of mid-February. So I got an opportunity to go to Vienna, present to the United Nations on inclusive education and using online learning and how that could work. Far did we know that that's kind of where we'd find ourselves over the next few weeks and months. But again, it was one of those humbling kind of opportunities to get there. And you don't quite see it from the picture here, but what my view down was all those interpreters, all those large desks, 600 people sitting in front of us. And it was just a really good opportunity to get in front of people across Europe. We're based in UCC. We won the best startup business in terms of what we're doing over the last while here at the Ignite program, which again is something that's nice. But I think more importantly for me, I wanted to pick a few students that I'd worked with while I was in Boston. And this is just one that came to mind, this fabulous young lady here, Maeve. So Maeve is cerebral palsy, is doing phenomenal stuff, is doing really well in terms of the school she's in. And we worked a lot with Maeve to sort of develop, I suppose, AAC for her. So how could she use communication? How could she use technology to help her better communicate? She was nonverbal, but again, saw herself as her two sisters. Really was the spitting image of them, and wanted to be just like them. She went, she did Special Olympics. She went skiing in the winter. She did all sorts of things that regular kids do, and why not? And I think that's why it was important to kind of bring up somebody like Maeve. And a slight interesting side note that Maeve always wanted to sound like her sisters. And so obviously if any of you are familiar with AAC or technology that you would, like picture board technology, I suppose, but on a laptop or on an iPad, it's normally adult orientated or adult sounding or Stephen Hawking's kind of sounding, right? And so for Maeve, she wanted to sound like her sister. And there was this phenomenal company in Boston who were able to take both of her sisters' voices and literally merge them together and take a few nuances of the verbalization that Maeve would have, and they mashed it all together, and they created this phenomenal voice for her that was child-orientated, but had those sort of Boston twangs of both of her sisters, and it was just phenomenal to see, to be honest. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. In terms of the overall, what I kind of want you to imagine from this session is, after this, could I be on top of technology? Could I have a grasp of what it is and an understanding how I get it, where I get it more importantly, and what is free? Because that is the key thing for lots of what we're doing. We want to be able to access the built-in functionality, not just the bits and pieces that we have to pay a large amount of monies for. And that for me is the sort of goal for you, but by the end of this session. In terms of my own story, in terms of having dyslexia, it's just one of those, I guess it's just one of those things. I didn't think it was any differently, when I was going through primary and secondary education, having dyslexia and ADHD, I see it as a benefit in many ways. I think when I was younger, I had no great aspiration to even do my Leaving Cert, to go on and certainly not go to college. But it was part and parcel of what I was. I was just bad at spelling. I was bad at reading. I was poor at organization. I was somewhat clumsy in ways. I couldn't remember times or get myself together. And we are thinking back, 20 plus years, right? 25 odd years ago, when I was really started coming to the fore, and obviously secondary experience was a bit different. So again, I have dyslexia. I struggle with spelling. I'm terrible at it. There's no doubt about that. And it's not getting better. But the technology, I would say, is probably helping me a lot. And there's no doubt, I tap into the technology all the time. It's something that I use for kind of everything I do. So I just wanted to kind of give you a sense of the hard facts, if you will. So the last assessment I had was in and around 19. And if any of you are familiar with percentiles, obviously you would be. And around that age, that time I should say, they were still using reading ages and spelling ages. And I just wanted to put it in context. That's what I was at when I was 19. And I'd hedge a guess that it probably hasn't improved greatly. Obviously the technology, scaffolds what I do greatly on a day-to-day basis, and I'd be lost, absolutely lost, without technology myself right now. And that's why I feel quite passionate about being able to engage with the kids that I work with, and obviously the educators like yourselves that are engaging with those students. For Una, who's here from Milton, if there's anybody else from Milton CBS, it's actually a great school. Let's not beat around the bush here. It is a great school, and I had a great opportunity to come through it. But I just wanted to pull up my first year results. So we're going back over 20 years. But I failed 4 in first year, and I wasn't your scholar, let's put it that way. And I certainly had no aspirations, like I say, to go on to college, to do my leaving cert. Actually, I had in first year, even in 6th class, I think I was planning on leaving in junior cert, because that was a thing. I mean, it's a thing now, obviously, but it was much more of a thing then. Like 20 odd years ago, that was normal. You become maybe a mechanic or a plumber or fitter. There was lots of options. And so I was quite keen on actually doing that. And it's amazing actually how one good teacher, and literally like one good teacher when I was in 2nd year made the difference. So we were graded. I was in the bottom of maybe 5 or 6 classes. And I played up to being the master in the class for sure. There's no doubt. Like it helped me get away with not being great at my schoolwork. And this lovely lady, Marjorie Ryan, who was a science teacher in Milton CBS, I think she just saw like, this guy has something, like there's something there, let's work with it. And in fairness to her, she literally pulled me aside and just helped me get my head around what I was trying to do, helped me with the reading. And come exam time, she would literally read the questions to me and she would scribe them for me. And that was kind of before it was the norm, right? Like we're all familiar with that now. It was pre kind of SNAs, it was pre-support really. She was the one that literally made the difference for me. And she was probably the one that like made me believe in myself. And so I'm kind of saying that because I think it's really important that you as an SNA, as a teacher, realize that you literally have that power to change lives of kids. And it can be via technology, but it can be just in believing in the kids that are in your class or that you're supporting on a day-to-day basis, be that virtually or in the classroom. So in terms of my story, some of the kind of takeaways, could talk about it all day, but like one thing for sure that helped me an awful lot from the get-go was becoming good at touch typing and starting to use technology at an early enough stage in secondary. Probably not until after my junior cert, but certainly it was something I tapped into quite a lot. And touch typing. I know that sounds like the most simplest thing, but it's all about the simple takeaways. Like for me, if you learn anything, if you take any of the session, it is that if you're working with kids and the younger they are, the sooner you should start in terms of touch typing. The other thing here, I suppose, is to focus on the kids' strengths, right? Like all too often we focus on the things they're not good at, the negative pieces. So I'm not good at spelling. Okay, I know that. Like I worked at my spelling, honestly, for years. And when I initially finished my leaving cert, I ended up dropping out. Actually, I didn't go to college straight off the bat. I dropped out for 2 years and actually worked as a car valeter and then car sales and did random odd jobs for about 2 years or so. And during that period, I went back to adult literacy classes thinking I must have just not learned how to spell and read in school. That was the issue. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to really focus. And I focused on those negatives and I literally couldn't develop it. And so I focus much more now on things that I'm good at. And obviously, that's one of my kind of key takeaways in terms of my own experience. So around mental fitness, that for me is the key. And it is to focus on that. And it's just to touch base. Like, how are they doing? And we often talk about it as mental fitness, and we talk about our physical fitness quite a lot, especially in kind of lockdown times. It's about getting out and getting a bit of exercise, and it's good for you, but it's also good for your head, and it's good for kids' head too. And how we work that into the day or the evening, or how we promote that. Again, you're a key influencer in those kids and trying to get that across the board, I suppose. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm just going to look at the questions right now. I'm just going to look at the questions in a second, and the guys can tell me if there's anything popping up or not. And I'll come back to that. All right. So before I come back to the questions, actually, because I do want to dive into the questions, I just briefly want to talk about some of the technology. And let's do that right now. So let's talk about the technology, because that's obviously the key takeaway here. And I'm sure that you took something from that last 10 minutes too, right? And hopefully so. But for me, it's obviously with the technology. And I'm going to do a number of demos here. What I actually did is I pre-recorded some stuff so I can send it out to you. We're going to look at it right here in a few minutes. I'm going to look at all the built-in pieces of the iPad. We're going to look at all the built-in pieces of the Windows 10. And then I'm going to pick out, I literally have a list here in front of me of the things that you could be using tomorrow, next week with the students. Obviously, there's a bit more you could be doing on that, but I want you literally to walk away knowing what's out there and feeling kind of confident to say, yeah, I watched this webinar last night and I know these 3 pieces of technology, they're free, they're readily available. Okay, so there's 3 things I just want to touch on, and that is the misconceptions around technology. So technology feels scary or overwhelming. That's something I hear a lot from teachers and SNAs that I work with. It's really about seeing those built-in features. And I recorded a video. It literally is 5 minutes. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to show you in 5 minutes how you could be making the difference. How, like the built-in readback functions, the voice recognition, the built-in pieces that could be making a massive difference to you right now are there and are on your device right now. So I want you to step away from thinking, I'm not really good at technology, it's not for me, or the one I always hear, I'm a technophobe. It's going to be very expensive. I hope that I probably touched on this in the last few minutes, that it doesn't have to be. There's an awful lot of stuff that's built in, that's there already, that you can have access to, that you can jump into tomorrow and start using. And if you're a parent, or if you're like say an SNA or a teacher, then it's there. And of course, like there's a range of prices, and we'll look at that in a few seconds, because I want to show you how you could be using, some of the sales that are going on. I'm going to show you some of the decent laptops that you could be buying. And it's really important, like we might spend a little bit more now, but it's the longevity then of that device, but I think it's important that there is that range of technologies. There is that range of prices as well. And certainly my take on this whenever I work at schools is what's in a student's pocket, what's there right now in terms of your phone, in terms of your device, be it a laptop, be it an iPad, literally has the technology, has the functionality to make a difference. And I can't harp on it that enough. And so hopefully you're now thinking, yeah, actually, I agree with him. It's not as expensive as I thought before, and it's not as overwhelming as I thought it was before. And hopefully that's something that's sort of sinking in. This is the one that we see always. And is this a misconception? Maybe. Or maybe it's a truth and we just need to get over it. Students are always going to know more. There's no doubt about that. They naturally are curious. They're fast learners. Like I say, we've got a small little boy at home, Oisin, honestly run rings around you in terms, and we try to, funny that I say that, we try to keep him away from technology actually in many ways. At least we try, in terms of screen time or whatever, for the most part, if it's feasible. But honestly, like in terms of him using our devices, using the remote, he just has it, and they're curious, and they don't think they're going to break it, and they have this mentality of, I'm just going to keep pressing all the buttons and keep trying until I fix it, like till I get wherever I want to be. And we need to have that same mentality as kids. Like, are you going to break the iPad? Maybe, but probably not. And I think we need to be more, I suppose, curious and sort of lean in on the technology yourself and just mess with it a little bit. And so some of the things we'll touch on this evening, hopefully, you can be doing it literally there as you're watching me. You can do it maybe this evening or tomorrow, or whenever you watch this, maybe you can get a chance to jump in and do some of those pieces. And it's the key thing for me is you just need to know enough about how to make it work for the student. So let's put it this way. If for example, you use the remote to watch TV tonight, or after you jump off this session, like you are using the remote. Do you really know the internals of how the remote works, how it connects to the TV, how your Sky Digital box works? You don't, but you know just enough to let it work. And I think that's, that's a small thing to take, but like it literally is as simple as that. Like we don't overly think, how do our phones work? We just use them and we drive on. And I think it's the same with some of this learning technology. That's kind of where we need to get to, I think. Okay, so hopefully that's making sense. I'm going to jump into the questions in a second, because I want to go into some kind of demo time now as well, right? So I'm going to stop my share and just jump back here, if that's all right. So I'm just going to look at some of the questions, if that's okay. And again, thank you so much there's a few more that have just come on. You're all super, super welcome. I see the chat is going on there. Great accent. I don't know. Well, I'm actually going to tell you that there's this lovely lady that a teacher in Dublin that I worked with, and she did a conference in the UK, and she said she was at the conference. It was online, obviously, and she said there was a recommendation for your ability in her online courses in the UK, and literally the comment was, "Great courses, super content, if you can stick his accent." I honestly, I miss you not. That literally was that's literally what it was. But anyway, look. This is what we have to deal with. And you can only imagine when I was in Boston, the abuse I got. So what I want to do right now is I just want to look at a few questions before we go into demo. Is that okay with people? If you got questions, please drop them into the chat, or sorry, drop them into the Q&A, I should say. And we're answering off some of them. We're leaving some of them open, and I'll answer some of them live. Is that okay? And obviously, there's a bit of chat going on there as well. So hopefully, if you've any questions there, just drop it in. So I'm just going to pick up on somebody's Q&A right now, and then we'll get back to demo. So yeah, so there's a quick question here from Caroline, and it's basically a student in sixth class. She's learning to touch type. You know, she's working on maths games. She's dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyspraxia, and basically, how would you best prepare her for secondary school in terms of maths, which is one she's quite weak at? So here's the thing. I guess for me, it is just for them to be as confident in using the technology as possible. It's not about getting everything and anything. I got an email from a mom just this morning. She literally listed out every piece of technology, assistive tech you could think of, like a list that was probably 1,500 euros or €2,000 worth. That's not what we need to do as educators. Like, it's about starting. I always say start with one or two things. So if you feel she's poor at maths, maybe you could look at something like IXL maths. You know, you could look at Equatio, which is a really good one. Text Help in Northern Ireland run this thing called Equatio, really nice piece of math software. But touch base with the teachers. If you're an SNA or a parent, touch base and see what is it that you can do in terms of scaffolding her curriculum right now in sixth class, and what's that going to look like in secondary, and really just get her prepared for potentially using the device on a more ongoing basis, submitting homework if that's feasible, getting her to maybe voice dictate some, but touch type other pieces. It's just about a mixture of technologies. And, you know, I do sometimes get a lot of people that ask, well, why is it not just all voice recognition, or why is it not all text to speech? Well, the key part is that, you know, you need to have a large toolkit, because just by the virtue of you having technology, like, you can't use voice recognition in a busy mainstream class. It just isn't feasible, you know. So we can't have a student that's speaking into their laptop or their iPad in a classroom. I mean, in some cases, okay, it might work, but I feel it just isn't feasible to the rest of the class. So that's something you use at home, and potentially you touch type, or you type in class, or you take a picture of the board. You know, there's multiple options. Yeah, so can you set times on a laptop to tell them when they're finished? There's a number of Chrome or browser plugins that you could use. Tomato Timer is a really nice one that I use, but it's the Pomodoro technique. So I would use Pomodoro quite a lot. It's like 20 minutes of bust, and you try to like silence everything else. But I'll send out a few on that. Like, there's some lovely ones that you could be using, all free, all browser oriented, or Chrome. You can get a few that you can download too. But again, there's really nice timers, I think, that you could use. Motor skills. Yeah, hi Eileen. So Eileen was just wondering here, will I be sharing the recording, and is it okay to share? Absolutely, yeah, no problem at all. Please just share away. Like, I'll send out the link tomorrow morning once it's recorded, and I'll go from there. So I'm going to answer one more. Need advice. So this is Sandra. Need advice on voice to text software for post-primary for state exams. Voice recorders, I find it hard for students to develop skills in the time frame. Okay, so I'm going to record that one. So voice recorders, like, I could talk the whole hour and a half on some of this stuff, but like, think about the reality here. Like, we still in state exams give kids a voice recorder, like a recording device for them to record their answers into. They can't go back, they can't look at it, they can't see what they just said. Okay, sometimes we can let them flick back and forward. You know, it is just a minefield. So for me, like, what I would say is, Andrea, it depends on the age. I don't know if it's pre-fifth year and you think that there's a feasible opportunity to get them touch typing, you know, and fine gross motor skills aren't a major issue, then I'm all in on touch typing. Because let's be realistic, in terms of the state exams, you will have a far greater chance of meeting the criteria for a word processor versus using voice recognition, and they're moving that direction. Okay, they're moving towards more use of laptops / iPads to a degree, but mostly laptops, and word processor being the key criteria there. So if you have to go that direction, you have to use voice to text. Then again, a lot of the things that I'm going to look at here, like Google Voice, you know, like the built-in dictate on Word. At the moment, those things need access to internet. So they're not going to work for state exams. They are really useful for students outside of state exams. But for state exams, we'll be looking at something like Dragon Naturally Speaking Professional 15. That is the golden standard in terms of voice to text. Now, there is a large learning curve to that, so I think that's something you just need to be kind of mindful of, okay? So I'm going to, great stuff. So I'm going to just jump back into my presentation. Is that all right? There's a good few more questions there, but the guys, yeah, looking for a study planning tool. Yeah, like that person is looking for this. So this person here looking for a study planning tool for LC student. Maybe just pop in a tiny bit more context. Is it that you want to be able to set up the study for them, or that it's something that you want them to be able to use? You know, and I'll jump back to that there literally in a second. All right, so great stuff. So what we're going to do now, we're going to do a few demos, right? And I really do want to kind of jump into this. I firstly want to show you what you can and can't do in terms of buying technology. You know, like it is something that people ask a lot, and maybe in schools you already have the technology, or you're curious as to what technology you could be potentially using. Well, you know, what I would say is that it's not about buying the cheapest. You know, you walk into the doors of Curry's, of Tesco, of wherever, and they literally will sell you something for 200, 250 euros. And believe me, it will not last. It really will not. Like I had some mom, actually was a teacher yesterday that was looking at buying tablets that were costing 79 euros in Tesco. And like, what apps and what accessibility and what level of functionality are those devices going to have? I'd much prefer if you just bought 2 or 3 devices and shared them and use more interactive interactions in the class versus trying to buy, you know, 10 that are 79 euros. So let's jump into it right now. I see there's a lot more questions coming in. Get back to it. So laptop, iPad, I think that should be it. Like, this is the key part down here. It is the criteria, the things to remember. It is, you know, what type of spec should you be getting on a device? What should it look like? How much should you be spending? For me, you know, especially for kids with DCD, with ASD, it's relatively small screens. It's about getting small, 14-inch, I would say max, and 8 gig of RAM minimum, I would say. I mean, you'd probably get away with 4, but like if you want the longevity, then that's important. In terms of storage, I'm getting a bit tech here, so ignore me if you want, but these are some of the key criteria that I think are important when you're buying technology or if you're opting for technology. Just see. Yeah, I will. There's a quick message there. Will I be sharing these? Yeah, absolutely, Fran. I'll share all this. I'll have a lot of information for you tomorrow. So 14-inch screen, 8 gig of RAM. Like, this is a small thing, and this is over. You can go into Curry's, right, and you can buy a slightly cheaper laptop with a different type of hard drive. Let's not get into the technicalities of it, but if you're buying a laptop or if you're opting for the AT grant, please buy an SSD storage. Like a hard drive has to be SSD. So basically when you open the laptop, it turns on. It's much more engaging. It's quicker to load. It's just far better. I would say a minimum of 256 if that's feasible. And then we're down to this processor. I think if you can get Intel i3 or i5, if at all feasible, but I'm conscious that i5 might push the price ever so slightly. So let's go for i3. And here's the thing that I just want you to be really clued into. And this is something that I see a mistake happening all the time. So Windows 10 is by far the best operating system. I use a Mac myself, but I don't recommend a Mac for kids in education because it's too expensive. It's not something that you need, and more importantly, you want to become comfortable with what kids will potentially be using in state exams, if they are going to use it in state exams. So please bear in mind, go for Windows 10 operating system, but do not go for a Windows 10S. And there's a slight differentiation there, but there's a big difference on the functionality of the device thereafter, right? So again, you'll see these Windows 10S hard drive or operating systems being a little bit cheaper, and that's great, but you won't be able to load any software on it. So if you're like the person asked me the question a few minutes back, what type of voice recognition can I get for a student? If you need to get voice recognition like Dragon, then it's a piece of software that you literally have to load on the device. It would have to have good processing speed. And really, Windows 10Ss are really made for Windows apps. Okay, so they're not really made for loading software. That's what makes them cheaper. But again, they're great for kind of day to day, and for you and I, maybe just having a laptop at home for email and for surfing, you know, for on the web and whatever else, fine. But for outside of that, then it's an absolute waste of money if you go for a Windows 10S. Now, if you have a Windows 10S, it's workable, right? Don't get me wrong, like it's super workable. What I could add to this is obviously, like I'm all in on Chromebooks as well. So if you're sitting there and you say, look, James, I've got a Chromebook, brilliant. Chromebooks are super. The only thing is they're probably not usable in state exams, or won't be in the short term at least. So that's why I kind of just opt for getting kids used to using what they have and what they potentially will use in a state exam. All right, that's an important one. So let's jump from here, and we're still sharing, great. All right, super guys. So let's look at this. So everyone's with me? I think we're all good. Yeah, we're getting through it, and this is some really good questions coming in. Thank you so much. So again, thanks for putting that in, Sarah. That's that's the Call Scotland one there. Thanks, Sarah. You might share that with all as well if you get a chance. So here's Curry's. So I'm just on the laptop section. They actually have a really good sale going on at the moment in terms of laptops, which is great. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to go over here to the left-hand side. I'm just going to pop in a few criteria. So I'm going to go for I'm going to start at 499 to 699. I'm going to come down here then, and I'm just going to look at the things I spoke to you about, right? I am going to look at screen size. I'm going to look at 14. I am going to look at the processor. Okay, so the search is getting less, which is great. I'm going to look at the processor, and let's go with i3 for the moment. So that's working. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. All right, let's see where we're at. Okay, so let's just have a look here. And the other one, I just want to make sure that we don't have operating system is just Windows 10. So you can see that there's 5 options there for 10s, right? And there we do not want to be opting for those. So we just want to understand. So now we're down to a nice subset, and I only hit on 3 or 4 criteria there. Let's just pick out a laptop here. This is actually one that I recommend quite a lot. So it's 539 at the moment. So it's 14-inch. It's got everything that we kind of talked about here, right? It's a good laptop. If you look at some of the spec here, it's relatively light. It's got full resolution. Like this laptop will last, right? I mean, this will last, and I think that's the important part here. But look at the weight; it's 1.6 kgs. It's pretty light in comparison to lots of others. So hopefully that is making a bit of sense. I am really quickly. I'm just going to let's look at iPad, just to keep this going, and then we'll jump back again. So there's a few options. Obviously, you can buy through Apple. You can buy via CompuB, which are an Irish Apple store, pretty much. So we're not going to go for the new iPad, but actually, let's go down here. I typically just buy via Apple. I just think it's quicker. Literally have it within days. Again, you can buy via procurement. You're not going to get any laptops. Sorry, you're not really going to save on price, is what I would say. That is my key kind of thing for you. You're not really going to get any great savings. So let's look at the iPad. So there's a number of iPad variations. I'm going to go back one step here. So people often ask me like, oh, should I get a Pro? Should it be this size? Should I get the Air? No, absolutely. Like you're going for this thing that's just called the iPad. So it was the 2019 version. There's a new version this year, but like this version is super. It's a 10.2 display. You'll get it for less than 400 euros. It will work with an Apple Pencil. It will work with AR technologies. It will work with their built-in keyboards, but you can also buy much cheaper keyboards yourself, which I'll send a link to as well. But here we have it, right? This literally, if we look at the spec of this, so multiple finishes, capacity-wise, again, hands down, 32 gigs is perfect for students. I'm going to stop sharing for a split second, and I'm going to look at some of the questions. And Lisa here, Lisa, you got me with that one. I'm going to answer that one live, right? In terms of the 80 grant, I'm going to jump onto it in a second. All right, there's a bit of chat and a few more comments coming on. Keyboards. So there's a question here on keyboards that match the iPad. So that is one. Yeah. Like you can go and get the iPad one for sure, right? I mean, I use the iPad keyboard, which is pretty nice here. Yeah, it's lovely. Costs bones of €100, but I got it through work, so it's great. But the AT grant, what is it? What is it not? Who's it for? Who's it not for? So this is a blog post again that we wrote a while back, and we just updated it recently. But basically, the AT grant revolves around one particular one particular circular, right? So that circular was in 2013. It hasn't been greatly updated in the last while. These can apply. So I think there's a few key things here that I just want to map out, and they are this. So this is a really important part, right? This literally is on page 3 of the circular. I have a link here. I'll send this out. Like, I'm not going to go into this in detail, but I just wanted to touch on it for you. So if you're applying for an AT grant, basically on page 3, they say it's like a tiered approach. And I get this all the time from parents, especially, and then sometimes from teachers and SNAs that might be involved in the application. It is that just because you meet the criteria doesn't mean, just because you meet the criteria and you have a recommendation does not mean that you're entitled to a laptop or technology. I just want that to sink in for a second. And so hopefully you're either nodding or you're shaking your head at me. But that literally is it. I mean, and I say that because I know that, and that is fact. Basically, these are the kind of 4 key things that you should be doing potentially before applying for technology. So they'll want to see, have you been putting like all possible interventions and accommodations in place for that student? And obviously you have, and it's not been working. And so therefore you're going to the next level. Has all existing, and this is literally word for word, has all existing equipment within the school been tried and it just doesn't meet that student's current needs or challenges, right? So have you laptops or devices in the school that potentially could be used and would be fit for purpose? And if that's not the case, okay. So then it's about looking at, well, have the school actually looked at using their own internal funds? And this is a kind of always a sticky point, but that literally is there on page 3. Have they looked at internal money to buy that technology? And then the 4th one, we haven't got the grant now yet, mind. The 4th one is, has the student basically been allowed to use his or her own technology in school? And basically you have, as a school, you've allowed that to happen and it just didn't meet the criteria. So I think it's important that you remember there are the kind of steps that you will have to show when you put in the application as to why you're applying for the technology. As a school, when you make this application, you become the owner, or, like you're responsible for that piece of technology for the use by the student. Technically, it should be kept in school, but in reality, an awful lot of schools allow it to go home, and rightly so. You know the student best. Put a contract in place, asking parents and students to sign it. Insurance obviously is an issue, so you just need to look into the complexities of that. But personally, I think it's so important that kids get the opportunity to use the devices at home that they get via an AT grant. And the last thing I'll say here before we move on to something else is that, like, this one's really important. Okay, so often if they don't meet the criteria for the grant, or like the grant, the CNO turns it down, it's not workable, then do look into allowing them to use their own technology. And it's again, I could go into it in more detail here, but literally you that is allowed. Like, the department very much push that actually to use their own technologies, but in conversation and in negotiation with the school, with the correct policies. There's a lot of stuff that kicks behind it. It's not as simple as let's just come on in with your laptop. There's a few more complexities there, obviously, but please do bear in mind that is something that they push out. That is something that's important to people for sure. Okay, so hopefully that's making a bit of sense. Just want to look at the chat here really quickly. Yeah, so there are times where, like, there's just someone here that just says that basically, in terms of an AT grant and students with dyslexia not meeting the criteria, and you'll see that sometimes. But please do bear in mind that you can use technology that they have or that you have in-house. And here's the final takeaway point. There is no correlation, I'm going to say it again, there is no correlation between AT grant being approved or not approved and reasonable accommodations. Okay, so like, just hear me when I say that, and hopefully you're sitting there and you're nodding. And I want you just to absorb that. Like, I see it all the time. They'll say, well, if you didn't get the AT grant, it kind of means that you probably won't meet the criteria for reasonable accommodations. Zero relationship between both. That's important to get that across. It really is. But what I will say is you do, in that application for reasonable accommodations, you need to prove that the student has been using technology. So therefore, if they're using in-house technology or their own technology for accessing the curriculum and for giving back homework, well, that's proof enough. That's, like, you do need to prove in the reasonable accommodation application that you made the student was making use, and it was their main method of engaging with the curriculum. So that really is where that mix-up comes. But it's really important to get that out there, is that there is no correlation, I suppose, between both. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm talking at you. Hopefully it's okay. Okay. Children is nonverbal and very so there's someone here asking about nonverbal and very special needs. Absolutely. I will it's something that I want to dive into right now, because I just want to cover some of the built-in pieces. However, whoever that person is, it's DMCG is the title here. Literally just pop me an email if you don't mind. It's james@yourability.com, and I'll send you something on that. I'll send you some piece that you could be looking at. Is it true that if a student is not granted AT grant in primary, it means that they do not get AT in secondary school? No, again, that's one of the miscommunications out there. Absolutely not. If they have a diagnosis and there's a recommendation of using technology, or that could be beneficial, not even beneficial, that's essential to use, but they just didn't meet the criteria in primary, you could reapply for the grant in secondary. No question. Could be a different could be a different set of circumstances. The student has changed. There's some more workload. There's so much more to that application in secondary. As equally, if they have the device, or you have the device in house, then you can start using it, and it should help, is what I would say there, Claire. So. Is he responsible for it? Should have. There's a really good question here from Sarah in terms of insurance, and that is, child is using their own laptop. Is he responsible for it, and should anything happen to it, or should it be insured by the school? This is one of these weird loopholes in terms of insurance, in terms of connecting that whole sort of interaction between who covers what. Again, there's no hard and fast rule on that. Oftentimes, the parents will put it on their house insurance, and if something happens to it, then they might claim it that way. You can get insurance if they buy it via the likes of Curry's. You can get a 3-year add-on insurance, which works well. Some schools, then I've seen that they are covering students' own devices, which is a little bit tricky because it's not in their name per se. So again, I don't have any hard and fast piece on that, Sarah, but what I would say is, for me, it's about putting an AT usage contract in place. Really simple, one pager. This is what you're going to do with it. This is what you're not going to do with it. This is how you're going to use it in school. This is what you're going to do with, potentially, if you take pictures of the board, this is what you'll do with it. And the student signs it, the parent signs it, and I think that for me really is the kind of key. Let's look at this again. Okay, so what I want to do here is I want to show you a few things in terms of some of the built-in functionality around the iPad. Literally 5 minutes. This is 5 minutes. Stick with me. We're getting there. We're coming towards some of the more questions that you can ask. But again, just bear with me for a few minutes, and let's go ahead and watch some of these. So let's go ahead and have a look at some of the built-in accessibility that's actually on the iPad itself. So what we want to do here is we want to click on settings. So I'm using an iPad Air 2, so it's probably about 3 years old, works really well still, and it's running iOS 13 or iOS iPad, which is the latest version. So let's go ahead and click on settings. I just want to show you some of the built-in accessibility settings that we could all be using both on our iPads and our iPhones. So let's click on settings. So once you come into settings, you'll see that some of the settings on the left-hand side have actually changed. So what we want to look for here is accessibility. So you'll see accessibility on the left-hand side. We want to click that once. Once I come in here, there's a number of options depending on the disability. Predominantly, the group that are on this session really are more interested in kind of oriented around reading and writing. So what we want to do here is we want to look at spoken content. Now, if you're interested in visual impairment, you can see there's a whole array of options that are in here under vision. If it's physical or motor, there's again quite a number of options that are available here. Again, all built in. So let's go ahead and click on spoken content. So within spoken content, what I want you to make sure is selected is this speak selection at the top. So I have it enabled. I'll show you how that works in a few seconds. And then we have speak screen. So I also want that enabled. So if I pull from the very top with 2 fingers, which I'm going to do right now, it brings up this reading dialog box here. And what that does basically is anywhere the student is or the child is on an iPad, wants to get it read back, can literally just click 2 fingers from the top I can X out of it. If I go 2 fingers from the top again, just pull down, it just starts reading top left all the way to the bottom right. It's much like a screen reader, I suppose, in many ways. Now, I can change lots of other settings that are in here as well. I can change the voice types. I can have typing feedback for a student. So if I click on that once, in here, I can have characters read back. So as I type in a character or as I have each word written, it'll actually speak it back to me as I write it. Sometimes that can be useful for some students, especially younger, depends on the level of literacy. Let's go back one. I can change the voices. The voice types can be changed here. If we click on English, the default on the iPad is Samantha, but of course we could go to Ireland and we have Moira. If I click on Moira once, and then I can have the enhanced Moira, so I can go ahead and select that once. And now the enhanced Moira Irish voice, not Cork, could be Dublin, we're not sure, is now going to speak for me. So let's go back to spoken content. Let's just go down towards the bottom here. I can change the speaking rate. Of course, I just want to slow that down ever so much. Or I can, again, if it's a student who maybe wants to get the material read quicker, I can have it read quicker as well. But maybe somewhere just below half is probably good. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on the home button over here on the left hand side. Home button once. And now all I want to do here is I'm going to open up notes, just to show you 1 or 2 things in here and how it would actually read back to me. So let's click on notes once. Let's click on a new note top right up here. It's a new note. And once I'm in this environment, the keyboard appears for me. What you will see if I'm connected to Wi-Fi, which I am, down here, this is the little microphone icon. So once the microphone icon is enabled and it's not grayed out, that means you are connected and we can have our spoken word actually dictated and appear on the screen. Lots of people use this already on their iPhone or their Androids. And again, we would recommend that if you have a student that struggles with handwriting, with some spelling, you jump on here and use that. So I'm just going to use this as an example. This is an example of how we would use the reading feature on the iPad, full stop, new line. I don't use this for all of my writing, however, it can be useful for words I struggle with from time to time, full stop, new paragraph. Okay, so that's not too bad. So that worked relatively well. So that is dictation, so that's a nice another feature that we've just looked at there. So we've seen the readback function, we've seen the dictation. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to, with one finger, one tap, and then another tap, and I'm going to pull and drag. And now once I have that done, I can see speak. So speak appears here top right. I'm going to click speak once, and that speaks back to me. So if I tap on it and I click pause, I can stop it. So that is the speak selection that you turned on in the settings a few moments ago. So that's a nice little way to see some of the built-in accessibility on the iPad. So we looked at 2 things there, 2 really important features actually, and that is the readback functions, which are in settings and accessibility, and then we also looked at dictation. Now, if for some reason the dictation isn't working on your device, it's either you're not connected to Wi-Fi, or if you click on settings once and you come to the top here, and I just want to do a quick search. So I'm just going to look for keyboard. So if you search for keyboard and click on general, there's a setting in here that just mightn't be enabled, that's all. So once you come on in here, you will see lots of the keyboard functionality, you know, so auto correction, auto capitalization, yeah, there's like enable dictation. So for some reason, depends on the laptop, or sorry, depends on the iPad, if that's not turned on, then your dictation won't work. Just come in here and double check that this is actually enabled, and your dictation should work. I want to show you 1 or 2 things on my end that are live. Let's go do this. Okay, so we're all good here. So what you should be able to see here is pretty much like a Word doc. I'm using Microsoft 365. I just want to give you a sense of what you could do on a laptop. And again, like I said, there are so many built-in features and functionalities of the laptop itself, a Windows device. If we get time towards the end, I'll show you those. If not, don't worry, I have a really nice little 5-minute video that I'm going to give to you as well that I recorded just for this session. But I've come in here to Microsoft 365. I've opened up a Word doc. It looks very, very similar to, I'm sure, what you probably have. So what I want to show you here is some of the functionality that you would have seen just a few seconds ago. So let's go ahead and use the dictate. If you can see over here on the top right, I've got this dictate button. Okay, so if I hit the drop down And there's also a translate option, which has just been added in the last while, which is really interesting. I'll show you that in a second. But let's go ahead and try this, see if my Cork accent works. This is a quick example of using Microsoft Dictate, comma. I use it a lot in terms of my day-to-day communication, full stop, new line. Certainly makes life an awful lot easier for somebody who struggles with dyslexia and general spelling, exclamation mark, new paragraph. Today I'm trying to show teachers and all educators how assistive technology can really make the difference for students with additional learning needs and disabilities. Full stop, new paragraph. My name is James Northridge, comma. I'm currently in University College Cork, and very soon will be kicked out by the security guard, exclamation mark, new line. Okay, so let's see, not bad. Missed a little bit of punctuation maybe here and there possibly, but I think for the most part it got it pretty spot on. Didn't capitalize my first name, which isn't good, but if I click on it, you will see here it gives me this this suggestion. If I hit it once more, now you see it went green there really quickly. So the next time I use dictation, it's picking those up. And it's building those off my profile because I'm actually logged in here, if you can see in the top right. So again, this is out of the box. This is something that I do use a lot in general, but for students, there's no great learning curve. It's available on multiple Microsoft products. It's available on Word. You do have to have Microsoft 365, but a lot of schools have access to it, or else you could potentially buy it. If you're going through that whole grant application, you get it for that €69. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense in terms of what's available. Now, I want to show you something else here as well. I'm actually going to jump in and I'm going to show you, in terms of getting this read back. That's always something. So let's just select this in terms of reading. Let's go to view. So I went up here to the top, the ribbon at the top, right? Okay, so again, I'm kind of whizzing through some of this because I want to touch on a few more bits and pieces, but like, this is stuff that I do all the time. I regularly do sessions and more detail on this. And of course, for those of you, I see that there's loads of you here on our online course in terms of assistive tech. Like that is something we go into in an awful lot more depth and detail. Well, I really do want you to walk away with some kind of takeaway. So I clicked on view, I clicked on immersive reader. Let's just see what happens here. So now this is what I see, okay? So this is interesting. You know, so if I pop my cursor up here, I've got a few options. This literally is Word, and you will see this in your standard Word, or if you're using Microsoft Office, it's available on, again, as an add-on. And this is something we would have seen in, if you're familiar with Read and Write Gold, or, you know, Read and Write for Chrome. There's multiple plugins that are available, but this is literally out of the box. And look at the functionality I can change here. Let's go up here, top right, text preferences. Brilliant. I can change the size of the text depending on the student, depending on the age, depending on the ability. I can change the font type, the color. I can do more in terms of the formatting. Let's just leave it at this. And I'm going to leave that yellow background. I then click here and I can get these grammar options. So you can see now that some of the words have been broken down by color. Nouns and verbs are turned on when I was last doing this. So if I wanted adverbs, I can turn that on too. And I can change the colors in terms of how they display or what they look like. Yellow obviously isn't a great choice, James. Let's go with purple. Yeah, all right. So that works. I can get the show labels, which that'll just show what each one is. And depending on younger students, and think we're doing some literacy development here, depending on the class or the setting. If I go to reading preferences, now this is really nice. I've got a few things turned on here. I have picture dictionary turned on. So picture dictionary is turned on. I just want to show you line focus. So this might be something you've seen, but it's really nice. So line focus, and let's just bring it down to 3 lines. So now as I skip through this, if I put my cursor here, it's just going to read back, and I can flick down through however long that piece of text might be. You can also do this from the Microsoft Edge browser. Okay, so the Edge browser has this exact functionality built in, completely free, like out of the box. And it's got the read aloud functionality, which is super in terms of helping kids with reading. Let's go ahead and hit the play button.
This is a quick example of using Microsoft Dictate. I use it a lot in terms of my day-to-day communication.
Okay, so again, there's not as many choices as we would wish, but again, this is free, right? So we have female, we have male. We can speed it up, slow it down a little bit.
Communication certainly makes life an awful lot easier for some.
It's you know, like the female voice, I think works pretty well for most students that I work with. Again, we can just go back up here, reading preferences, turn offline focus. But here's another nice little one. If I click on the word and I hover over it,
this,
I can just have that word read back. Let's pick out something like teachers. Teachers, obviously.
Teachers.
Technology. So with certain words, it puts in these like board maker. So for any of you who are familiar with AAC, then it's going to pop in these board maker icons, which is really, really nice. And again, I can get them read back.
Technology.
Let's go over here and let's put translate on. I don't really speak an awful lot of languages really well, but if I did, let's get French, France. Okay, so let's look for teachers again. And so now we see the English version and we see the French version, right?
Enseignant.
I think that's right. Okay, so let's go back and see what this looked like before we turned on Immersive Reader. And that's what the student would have seen. So there's a massive transformation there. And this, like I say, is pretty much out of the box. Okay, how are people doing? You sticking with me? Any Q&A, just drop them in, please. I'm going to get to them in a few minutes. I do want to show you one or two more things here while we're here. So for those of you who are asking for a list of apps, I had Sarah and Nathan share that, but this is called Scotland. And these guys do phenomenal work around like app development and just collating what apps work well. So this is their iPad apps for learners with dyslexia and reading difficulties. They also have it for kids that are nonverbal, and they cover a whole spectrum, like complex communications and whatnot. So what they've done basically is if we start right in the middle here, if we start in the middle and we work out. So we look at reading, then we look at text to speech, and then we come out here, voice stream reader, brilliant app, love it. You know, there's a few, like obviously we looked at speak selection already. Clara Speak is another lovely one. Let's look at writing. Let's go down here to writing and look at writing support, which again, we looked at a little bit of kind of, I guess, Siri and what's built into the device. But some of these are lovely, like this one here, Voice Stream Reader and Voice Stream Writer. I spoke about Reader. Writer is a phenomenal app, and that whole Voice Stream suite is more expensive than most of your apps. So you're probably talking 10 to 15 euros per app, give or take. But they are the best suite of apps. Honestly, like if you had to buy 3 apps tomorrow for you know, literacy development and for writing, I would go with Voice Stream Reader, Voice Stream Writer, and they also have like a PDF version, kind of like a scanning version, so you can scan a page and you can have it read back to you. Honestly, 30 euros and the iPad is golden. And so hopefully you're sitting there literally nodding your head saying, actually, that's what I'm going to buy tomorrow. All right, super stuff. So that's, and this is the Chrome, like they also have these extensions, right? A really good friend of mine, Mike Morale from Washington, developed this. From Washington State. So he works with the guys in Scotland and Edinburgh, and this is pretty new. So again, like working with PDFs, you know, we can get PDF readers, we can get the text help PDF reader, and many of these are free, like writing support on a Chrome browser. And a Chrome browser can either be it can be just a plugin, it can be free, and many of these are free. Like a lot of people there were asking you about organization and keeping people focused. Like this one here, Stay Focused, lovely app. Completely free again. In terms of homework planners and homework study around the LCA stuff, student planner, like my homework student planner, brilliant, completely free. Let me see another one that I think is really good. Not necessarily for organization, but I use it for organization, and that is Google Keep. Another one that will work really well, obviously sticky notes, and for those of you who are using OneNote, then that's a good choice. So I'm going to share all these with you afterwards. That's what I will do. This is the last kind of freebie that I'm going to show you. So this is called Natural Reader. And Natural Reader is really good piece of technology. Again, you can use it online, completely free. It's a built-in reader. And so again, I can, if I close this, let's just go to this. Okay, so there's some text in there already. If I select the text, I can have it read back.
Drag and drop your files
or type,
Easy's going on here. You see
paste,
it at the bottom.
and edit text here.
Yeah.
Natural Reader is
So it literally just brought up that nice little display box at the bottom, and I put the words in there. You can turn on the dyslexia font, which is nice. A lot of students like that. It kind of draws your eye towards the bottom. Again, like I would use this a lot with students with ASD, and we would kind of tone down the voice. Or what we would potentially do is we create an MP3. So create a file that you could put onto their device or their laptop, and it could be a paragraph or a page of a book they need to read, or a story they need to work along with, and that's just something that you can look at. So Natural Reader is good, free version online. Obviously, the upgrade, you pay for the upgrade, and then it's about, I think, $60 to $80 for the upgrade, and you get more voices. You'll see here, you get more voices. You'll just get more functionality, and you can get a download as well. But this completely works for free. So last thing I'm going to look at before I get back into some of my presentation and some of the Q&A, so that we can wrap you up literally within 90 minutes. This has been a good session. Lots of really good interactive, been fun. Obviously, I'm sure you'll notice once I start, it's hard to stop me. And like we could be talking about this for hours. Like this could be a CPD day, but I just wanted to give you an insight into what's out there and what's possible. It's not that you want to come off this knowing everything, but like if you come off this feeling more confident that, yeah, there's lots of free things out there, lots of things I need to find out about. Google Docs, let's look at their voice typing, which is very similar to what we had with Microsoft 365, but some people might say, well, I don't have Microsoft 365, I can't afford it. This is a free version if you're using Google Classroom, or if you just have a standalone student that's using a device, let's get them using something like voice typing. So similar idea, pops up here. I tap on it once and it just lets me speak. This is Google voice typing, works pretty well out of the box, not too dissimilar from Microsoft 365 new paragraph. Okay, so just a quick demo there. Again, you see that I made a few mistakes there, but it corrected itself, right? Because obviously it's connected and it's going over and back in terms of voices. This is something that I don't use an awful lot. I will be very honest. I don't use voice typing an awful lot, but you can see there it worked pretty much out of the box. And there's another thing I just want to show you here. If you are using Google Docs or using Google Classroom, then if you click on Tools up here, you come down here to Accessibility Settings. Okay, so if you had students that were visually impaired, for example, either on a laptop or an iPad, you can come along here and turn on screen reader support. So basically, if a kid is using an iPad to read something and they need to use like a screen reader, then it just makes all the documents much more interactive and kind of accessible to those individuals. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense. All right, we're flying it. Like something I didn't go through tonight, which we go through an awful lot on the course, is these guys here, is the scanning pens, giving you access to scanning pens, giving you access to free trials, getting the guys that run scanning pens to actually give some demonstrations, all that sort of stuff. My other ask, and I just had it written down here, is please give us a like on Facebook, give us a review if you found this good, a 5-star review if feasible and if possible. Look, there it is. I'm going to leave it there. Those Facebook reviews, if you're on the course and you haven't finished it, get your ass back in there and get through it. If you're stuck, if you're like, shit, I didn't log in for 2 months, it doesn't matter. Like we're here to help you. We're here to get you back on board, and we can even have a quick little call if that makes it easier, or a Zoom chat, and we can just get you back on track. I've got to go get a dairy milk for my wife and go from there and get out of the UCC. Lads, you were absolutely amazing. Thank you so much.